Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the mid lane tier list for patch 7.8. So starting it off in the tier 1 for this patch is going to be Kassadin. So Kassadin's making his way all the way up to tier 1 for this patch. I think I had him in tier 2 last patch. The reason to why he's tier 1 right now is because number 1, he received some really good buffs in 7.7 to his ultimate as well as to his E, which are making him a stronger pick. And then number 2, he's just a pretty good pick right now in this mid lane meta. So champions that he's doing really well against right now are champs like Echo, LeBlanc, Vladimir, Fizz. A lot of those mid laners are very highly picked, and therefore Kassadin's a great pick in a lot of situations. The only time that you wouldn't want to pick Kassadin is if you're up against someone like a Talon. Talon is his hardest matchup right now in this patch, and then like other AD mid laners like Zed and Yasuo can also do pretty good against the champion. Kassadin's ability to influence a solo queue game though is some of the best for any mid lane champion. If you take teleport on him, and once you do hit level 6, you can just look to go for so many good roam plays. Once you shove out the wave, you can look to roam top lane, look to roam bot lane, and if you do get ahead in the laning phase, it's just very easy to get a good snowball going with the champion if you can get a few good roams off. He's also a fairly simple champion to play in the sense that his combo isn't really reliant on hitting a skill shot or anything. He's not like a Fizz to where you need to hit Fizz's ultimate to be able to one-shot. You ult in with Kassadin, you use your point and click Q, you should be able to hit your E as long as you don't completely whiff it, and then you also have your W, which does a ton of damage once you do get the Lich Bane. So his all-in combo is just very easy, it's pretty much foolproof, and therefore if you can get ahead with Kassadin, your ability to assassinate squishy targets in team fights is just very easy to do so. So for when and when you should not pick Kassadin, I kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, but AD assassins generally do pretty well against the champion. I would be looking to pick him though against most AP mages in this patch. You do have a little bit of a harder time in the laning phase against ranged champions or against like any ranged champion in general. So if you are against a ranged mid laner, then you can just take the TP in those matchups. You start with like a Dark Seal, and you also can get a Corrupting Potion a little bit later on, and then you just sustain the lane till you hit the level 6. Once you hit level 6 against these AP mages, it's very easy for you to just chunk them out and then jump on them if they do end up like missing a skill shot or if they do end up misplaying. Now next up in the tier 1 here for this patch is going to be Fizz. So Fizz in 7.8, he's pretty strong for a lot of the same reasons that Kassadin's really good in this patch. So Fizz, against a lot of these meta mid lane picks, he can do really well into them. So for example, Syndra and Orianna are two of the most picked mid laners in this patch, and because of Fizz's E, it's just very easy for him to outplay the Syndra ultimate and to also outplay the Orianna shockwave. Now if you do play it correctly, like in the laning phase as Fizz, you want to start off with your ultimate, use your Q to gap close, and then once the Syndra like channels ult, or once the Ori uses her ultimate, then you use your E, and by doing that, it's just very easy to outplay a lot of these mid lane champions and get some pretty free kills in the laning phase. Now Fizz's early game is actually quite strong now because of the W changes he got a while back, so he's definitely a little bit stronger than Kassadin is for the first few levels. You can look to play aggressive with Fizz if you're up against an AP mage. His level 3 power spike is actually quite good, so if you see the enemy mid laner, say you're playing against a Lux or something, if she throws out her E to like farm the minion wave, or she tries to poke you with it, then you can use that opportunity to jump on her, get a free trade-off, and if you can get your W proc once your auto has been on the opponent for 2 seconds, it's going to do a lot of damage, and you can win trades very easily by doing that with Fizz in the laning phase. Fizz is also a great roaming mid lane champion like Kassadin, and he's also just really strong if you get ahead with him. So if you do end up getting a lead in the laning phase as Fizz, then look to be shoving out the wave and look to get deep vision down, look to try to go into the enemy's jungler and just try to find them, because if you're playing against a jungler, say like a Nidalee or just someone who's very squishy, then you can look to go in there. If you have your ultimate up and you catch them out low on a camp or something, then it's going to be very easy for you to pick up kills and just snowball the game even more. Now for some matchups for Fizz in this patch, his harder matchups include Anivia, Morgana, Kassadin, Kayle, and it's pretty much self-explanatory as to why they can do well into Fizz. I would say that you don't really have to worry too much about like the Morgana or the Kayle picks though, because those champions really aren't played very often, and Morgana would be used kind of just as like a cheese counter pick against you. So most matchups right now are great for Fizz. He does really well, as you can see there, against Syndra, Aurelion Sol, as well as LeBlanc. So if any of these like meta AP mages are picked right now, chances are Fizz can do really well in that matchup. So next up in the tier 1 here is going to be Anivia. Now Anivia in 7.8 is the best control mage champion that you can play. Her wave clear is better than any other mid lane champion. Her ability to shove and roam is also super good. If you do end up taking the ghost on Anivia, which I've been doing quite a bit recently, once you hit level 6, you can look to shove the wave and you can look to go like get deep vision down on the enemy jungler. You can look to go for roam either top lane or bot lane. And because she is just one of the fastest shoving mids at level 6, it allows you to roam around the map and just try to influence lanes or just try to get deep vision down, because if you can get vision down on the enemy jungler and just stop the jungler from influencing your lanes, then it's going to increase your chances of winning by quite a bit. Now in my opinion, what makes Anivia a really strong pick for solo queue is not necessarily her wave clear. Her wave clear is obviously a great part of her kit, but she's one of the only control mages that can actually look for picks and that can just end up catching the enemies out of position. So with Anivia's wall, I think her wall is one of the strongest abilities if you can use it correctly. If you put 2 points into it in the early game, then it's going to block off most entrances like to Dragon and to Baron and just pathways that you would want to try to escape. So if you do end up seeing the enemy AD carry or mid lane champion just caught out of position, you can throw your wall, and if they don't have flash up, then they're just gonna die instantly as long as your team is there to follow up. So I think that's like a really underrated part of Anivia's kit, and that's what makes her a really good pick for solo queue. Her team fighting ability and her zoning potential is also some of the best for any mid lane champion. With your ultimate as Anivia as well as your wall, it makes it so hard for the enemies to face check or just to contest any objectives. If you end up getting a lead with her and you can just start taking those dragons and Baron, then if the enemy comes into face check, you just can wall them off. You can use your ultimate to slow them down, and Anivia, if you get ahead with her, is an insanely strong pick. Now for when and when you should not pick Anivia, I think she's a really good blind pick. She's great into most matchups, but the only ones I would try to avoid would be Xerath and Vel'Koz. The reason for this is because both those champions outrange Anivia, so because of Anivia's range disadvantage, it is going to be hard for her to deal with those champions come team fights. And then to round out the tier 1s for this patch is going to be none other than Ahri. Now Ahri stayed a tier 1 for countless patches now. I think she's honestly even stronger in 7.8 compared to previous patches because of the new Gunblade build. The Gunblade build allows Ahri to have a really good early to mid game power spike. Once you do grab the Gunblade, your dueling potential, you can pretty much outduel any other mid lane champion, especially if they are skill shot reliant. If you have your Gunblade up and you also have Ignite, you can just dash in with Ahri. A lot of the time, you don't even need to hit your charm. You just press your Gunblade, press Ignite. If your W ends up proccing on the opponent and you hit the first portion of your Q, then you should be able to kill the opponent very easily. Now, I think Ahri right now in this meta is just a very good pick against a lot of the other meta mid lane champions. So for example, like Syndra or Orianna, she does really well into. She can also deal with champions like Zed or Talon or any of these assassin champions because she does have her ultimate. So if like a Talon or like Katarina tries to jump on her, she can charm them and then she can either look to kill them, or if she needs to, she can use her ultimate to get out of a sticky situation. Now for Ahri's matchups in this patch, she's probably your best blind pick mid lane champion. There's really no mid lane champion I'd say right now that hard counters Ahri. The only 2 champions that are winning against her in this patch, or the only 3 champions are Zillion, Annie, and Anivia, and that's only by like 0.3 or like 0.4%, so that stat really doesn't matter too much there. She's got an insane win rate right now against like LeBlanc, also against Zed and Cassiopeia, so if you're a good Ahri player, I'd be looking to pick her up for sure in 7.8. Now for the tier 2 champions in this patch, these are the strong mid lane picks. So these picks are a little bit weaker than the tier 1s. If you can play the tier 1s and you can also play the tier 2 champions, then I would lean more towards the tier 1s, but the tier 2s are still great in this patch, and I'm gonna put them up on screen here because there are a lot of tier 2 champions. So really the only champion here in the tier 2 that moved from either the tier 1 or from the tier 3 into the tier 2 is LeBlanc. Now LeBlanc was tier 3 in my last tier list. The reason she's tier 2 right now is because she's actually pretty good with this new Gunblade Lichbane build that people have been going on her recently. When I did my last tier list, people really didn't know how to play the new LeBlanc. After she did get nerfs to her W, she was kind of thought to be a dead champion, but then people started to go for this like Q-Max Gunblade build on her, and it's actually working pretty good for her right now in this patch. She does still take quite a bit more skill than a lot of these other mid lane picks though, so she's not a mid lane pick, at least in my opinion, that you can pick up right away and do really well with. She does take a little bit of practice to get used to for sure, but if you can play a good LeBlanc in this patch, then she's a very good pick for sure. And then for the tier 3 champions in this patch, these are the average or just viable champions. These champions can do well, like if you're a one trick on any of these champions, you can do pretty good with them, but there's usually another champion that can just do their job better, which is why they're in tier 3 and not tier 2. So for example, someone like Victor right now, Victor's a control mage champion, and Anivia can just basically do what Victor does, but better right now in this patch. Victor doesn't have that ability to like find a pick by himself unless he does end up like ghosting in with Rylai's or something, whereas like Anivia, she's got the wave clear, but she also has that ability to find picks and to single-handedly end up carrying a game. And then usually another reason to why these champions are tier 3 and not higher up is because they do have some pretty bad matchups in the current meta. So for example, someone like Kayle can do really well into a select few assassins, but other than that, she does really bad in any matchup that she gets outranged in. So against a lot of control mages, Kayle can just get crapped on because she's not going to be able to get in range to really do anything. So just because these champions have some weaker matchups and because there's other champions that are just flat out better, that's why they're in the tier 3 for this patch. So that is going to be all for this tier list, guys. If you did enjoy, then please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.